One of my absolute favorite products for somebody who's starting the ketogenic diet, and this is actually what we talked about on one of the shows, is Berberine. I think everybody should be on Berberine, but it's kind of the perfect, I can't think of anything that would be more appropriate for the ketogenic diet than a Berberine supplement.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Holistic Navigator podcast, where we believe in the body's capacity for self-healing if it's given the proper nutrients and care it deserves. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Brian Strickland. I'm the producer of the show, and here with me in the studio, as always, is your host, Ed Jones. We're excited to welcome back Carrie Pattison today on the podcast to chat about keto. Carrie is a national educator with Natural Factors, and we wanted to pick her brain about some of the symptoms that accompany the ketogenic diet and how to overcome them. She walks us through an extensive list of supplements that can help mitigate typical concerns about the keto diet, like the keto flu, nutrient deficiencies, and digestion issues. And she gives us a great explanation about how the keto journey can be even more rewarding when paired with these particular supplements. If you're curious about the keto diet, or if you're a die-hard veteran, it doesn't matter. This episode is going to cover it all. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get this thing going. Here's your host, Mr. Ed Jones.
Thank you, everyone, for joining again on The Holistic Navigator. Passion in my life is educating others as far as how to be healthy in this kind of chaotic, sometimes confusing world of information. It's not that we have too little, we have far too much. And the key is to be able to find ways to clear the fog and get to the core answers that are applicable to each and every one of us. And if you don't do it or have a person who's helping you do it, you're going to be lost in today's health jungle because aging is not in our favor. And certainly traditional medicine is sometimes in our favor and sometimes it's actually against us. So we have to be very informed. And, everyone who's ever listened to me speak on either my radio show, on The Holistic Navigator, on some of the blogs, on YouTube, watched on Instagram, you would have to know if there's one thing that I kind of keep coming back to, at least for my own personal and also advising others, is the diet in most cases, I believe, to lower the side effects of aging and to improve our health significantly, we need to be at least leaning toward a keto diet. And basically, again, the keto diet is a diet where we're teaching the body to burn fat for fuel. And when we do that, it makes our body so much more metabolically flexible. And what does that mean? That means that if you get sick, it can rebound quicker. If you have injuries, inflammation, anything that kind of pushes and shoves and pulls the body one way or the other, it's kind of like the tree that the willow that bends in the strong winds, and some of the other trees that are brittle, they'll break off. Well, we want to be the willow type of physical chemistry. And so what we're going to do today, I've got a great guest. In fact, I think this will be her third time on The Holistic Navigator. And I don't know if anyone's hit 3 yet, so this will be, obviously, we love having Carrie on The Holistic Navigator. So Carrie is a licensed herbalist, acupuncturist, trained in home birth midwife, and a graduate of the National University of Natural Medicine, and is a national educator for Natural Factors. And is an adjunct professor of herbal studies at Huntington University of Health Science. Welcome to The Holistic Navigator, Carrie Pattison.
Thank you so much, Ed. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Well, morning for some of us, and other times a day for those who are listening to the podcast at their leisure.
Absolutely, because it certainly will be. I mean, we are listened to now in all 50 states and actually connected with in a number of other countries. So there's no telling what time someone may be listening, and we appreciate every person. Again, if you go back to, I think it's April of 2019 on The Holistic Navigator, you will listen to me speak only to me about how I embrace the keto diet. In my life, I've been doing this almost 43 years, and I am a self-appointed guinea pig. And so I'm experiment how all these theories work, all these supplements work, and everything from in the gym to my knife and fork. And several years ago, well, actually a lot of years ago, and you know this, Carrie, the first rage in keto, which is high-protein diets, high-fat diets, and low-carb diets, is the kind of general terms of it, is Dr. Atkins. Dr. Atkins was a cardiologist who came up with this theory that we should eat less carbs and eat more healthy. No, he said eat more fat. He did not say healthy fat. And so there was this huge rage back, Carrie, you may know the year. I don't. It's probably...
I want to say like early 2000s.
Oh, yeah, maybe late 90s, actually.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s, yeah.
And so everybody started eating bacon and eggs, and they're losing weight like crazy. There were some dropping dead, a lot of gallbladder flare-ups.
I remember the first person that I saw doing Atkins, and they were drinking diet root beer with whipping cream. And I was like, huh.
Yeah. The things that satisfy the taste buds. But the thing is, that proves some good things to us. One is how not to do the keto diet, but it also proved that there was a significant amount of the population who finally lost weight when everything else had failed. Carbs are a demon to us, the excessive ones. And I want to say again, there's a lot of people who believe as long as a food has nutritional value and grown in a healthy environment, it's healthy for us. And it's simply not true. The only thing that makes foods extremely healthy or unhealthy is the impact it has on our blood chemistry, because that is where all of the diseases, most of them will be created, and certainly aging will be increased by an improper and unbalanced blood chemistry. In fact, one of my podcasts, Dr. LaValle, on how to analyze your own blood work. So please, for people who are getting it, don't expect your general practitioner to be doing this for you, please. So we're going to talk today, now that I've actually been doing keto and keto leaning for several years. Even I can make many mistakes on that, one of which is I didn't cycle at first. I do Monday through Fridays, and I do Saturday and Sunday different. But all the people I speak to, there's a host of kind of aggravating things that probably prevent the successful use and embracing of a keto diet. And we're going to go through that today. Carrie, I know that you and I both know about the fog, the brain fog, the physical fog that can come from being in ketosis, the constipation sometimes, the bad breath, a whole number of things. So I want to go through it because there's an answer to all of these for most people. I will have to say, Carrie, and I know I'm rambling way too much here, I did have one single client that I felt could not be on keto regardless of what we did. We kept looking at blood chemistry and things just did not work. So I'm not saying it's 100% keto, but I really believe it should be 90% of the population can embrace this. But we need people like you in order to help us fine-tune it so it's comfortable. So let's start talking, Carrie. What are the most of the common kind of problems and issues that people have that are struggling with keto?
Well, it's interesting because I'm like you, where I had some patients, pop up and say, hey, I'm curious about this keto thing. And I don't want to have anybody go off and do something that I haven't tried myself or am aware of. So I've done it a couple of times. And the first time I was not successful because I was not paying attention. And I learned a lot of lessons. And I think I went through pretty much all of the kind of feelings that people experience, the symptoms and the struggles. So, now I'm very aware of how we can really, I like to say we can fuel, because, right, the whole point is getting extra fuel in our body. We can fuel our keto success with some really just basic supplements. When we think about some of those main keto concerns, I think the biggest one that people think of is the keto flu, that first thing that occurs when they start the transition to a more low carb lifestyle. And we might be talking about specifically the ketogenic diet today, but I think about anybody who's transitioning into a low carb lifestyle is going to experience some of these things. People who are determining determined that, they need to stay away from gluten or grains. They're focused more on paleo. Anything where we're removing those carbohydrates from our diets, we're going to see some shifts in the metabolic state, like you said. So, the keto flu, yeah, it is. It's there's a lot of fun things that people may or may not experience with the keto flu. I find it's really fascinating that the people who have the most extreme sort of symptoms, as far as feeling just, I think there's a reason they call it the keto flu, right? You feel off, you have headaches, your digestion isn't happy, you're foggy brained. I've had some people that have told me, their number one side effect of the keto flu is crankiness. And it really depends on how carb heavy our diet was to begin with, because our body is shifting and essentially utilizing up those stores. And so we have to kind of get through that process to where those, we've passed through those stores. One of my absolute favorite products for somebody who's starting the ketogenic diet, and this is actually what we talked about on one of the shows, is Berberine. I think everybody should be on Berberine, but it's kind of the perfect, like, I can't think of anything that would be more appropriate for the ketogenic diet than a Berberine supplement.
Right, because the research is volumes actually of research on this natural herb that many people, who are searching alternatives to pharmaceuticals. So if, they're looking at metformin and they look at berberine, berberine shines pretty strong in the light of research as far as a product that can accomplish many similar things. Of course, again, I want to encourage people, just because keto may sound like, when you're hearing these side effects, some may say, well, why would I do this? I truly believe that if we don't do something like this, we are going to accelerate aging at a very, very fast pace, if nothing else. And we also will not have the proper, probably optimal body weight if we keep getting older and not addressing the ratios of macros, protein, fats, and carbs, and fiber. And again, I do 50 carbs Monday through Friday approximately, and then on weekends I do probably 150 to maybe sometimes 250. The cycling is what keeps me going. It makes me feel well. But berberine is, again, if I want to optimize my gym workout, I'm going to, talk to people who can, number one, help me do the practice itself with the right technique. But I'm also going to try to optimize, when do I drink my protein? How do I go into the gym with the proper stuff on my stomach or not? Do I do this? What supplements do I take? Well, why would I not do that? If I'm going to put out the effort, I want the best success. Well, the same with keto. So, you can do keto without any additional supplements and still get your probable goal if you really stick with it. But why not make it even more effective? And as we age, we start losing insulin sensitivity. And berberine is one of the greatest herbs to help us in management of healthy insulin of anything. And that is the number one blood test to me that indicates a corrosive nature of our own chemistry. And I love insulin to be under 2 to 3, but at least in the single digits. If you have double-digit insulin, you are going to not fare well as the years go on. So there I go rambling a lot again, Carrie. But let's talk real quickly about berberine and maybe the dosing of it, and how would they do that?
Yeah. So when we talk about, I'm gonna list some things off here, and you tell me, is it berberine or is it keto? We'll do a little game here. Where we want healthy weight loss. We want, support blood sugar levels. We want to support healthy cholesterol levels. We want optimal aging from a cellular perspective. What is that? Well, that's berberine, but it's also keto, right? It's both of them. So that's why I say they're the perfect thing for each other. Everything that people are expecting to experience on a ketogenic diet is what berberine does as well. But I also really love that it's so bitter. It's a bitter compound. And we know in herbalism that bitter compounds are the things that help support the digestive system. So especially when we're transitioning to more of a high fat diet, we need those bitter components in our food. And it's, completely lost in our standard American diet today, those bitter foods. So here we have another thing that's amazing about berberine is getting a little extra bitter in our body to help with the enzyme breakdown of those excess fats. So I think it's really funny when I talk to people and I'm like, what are you looking for with keto? And I'm like, wow, that's exactly what I would suggest you utilize berberine for clinically.
Well, and I love the conversation about bitters, and it's very few people actually know that, wild animals will seek out bitter foods when they are feeling less than well, and they instinctively know kind of what their body is crying out for. We've lost those instincts along the way, and so it's, we have to go back to some ancient wisdom. And to me, looking at the history of what's going on with ancient cultures even, and pairing that with something like PubMed research. So it's not just all anecdotal, but it's also not just scientific. And, I really like recommending the herbal bitters in a spray form for people who are having gallbladder issues, digestion issues, because it stimulates your own body to optimize its own enzymes. And I love that whole theory. And I will have to say, you are the educator for Natural Factors. I went up to Natural Factors with three of my coworkers about 3 or 4 years ago. And again, I've been in this industry 42 years. I've never, ever been as impressed with a company with their quality standards and their ethics as I was Natural Factors. Absolutely amazing. Nothing is cutting corners there. So if you get berberine from Natural Factors or anything, you are getting the very best product out there with the potencies and everything done the right way. A whole lot of hidden stuff going on in every category of life. But then Natural Factors, they are the gatekeeper, and they will definitely make sure they do the right thing. So, okay, berberine.
Berberine. Again, there's one other thing we haven't talked about with berberine, though, that's really important for keto.
What?
Is the digestive complaints, right? Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people get constipation, but then I have had a lot of people tell me that they have excessive diarrhea issues as well. Just from the aspect of their liver not knowing how to break down those fats appropriately. So, and you look at historically, berberine, and that is its history in Chinese medicine, is that it was used for diarrhea. So here's another thing that it can do really effectively for the ketogenic diet is support, any sort of issue that you might have in your bowel, whether it is constipation or diarrhea. We're really going to get in there. And with not only the bitters, but just this herb in general is known for that. And I think that's a pretty awesome aspect of it as well.
Okay, so how about the next one, which I hear a lot of complaints sometimes about lack of energy. And so what do we tell people, advise them on this?
Yeah, I really like, lack of energy. There's a lot of things you can do for it. I think a lot of people know about the bulletproof coffee, right? That's, kind of the secret sauce. But, the people that are doing the ketogenic diet and also adding in intermittent fasting, or, they're just doing their bulletproof coffee in the morning, I think that they tend to end up with the opposite of too much energy, where they're fried, right? They have the caffeine jitters, and then they have that big kind of dump in the afternoon where they do have a lack of energy, and, just hitting coffee all day long is not effective at all. So this is where I really like the sun-theanine. It's also going to support that crankiness thing that I was saying earlier. So, sun-theanine is all about mental calmness, but acuity at the same time, really helping to sharpen the focus of the brain. Or, this is what L-theanine does. If we look at what L-theanine is, it's originally derived from green tea. So we're getting those nice aspects of it as well. I really, really like an L-theanine supplement. I specifically like sun-theanine because there is research that it being utilized alongside with caffeine actually will increase the value of both of them. You're going to get kind of a double benefit of that increased mental clarity aspect thing happening.
Well, I love, having a toolbox for myself first, and then, of course, being able to tell others that can help them through improving their quality of life. It wasn't 15 minutes before I came on with you. I had a lady who was, having real trouble, like so many people do. And I've certainly done podcasts on sleep, the early morning awakenings from midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's just so common because we have what I call cognitive popcorn that really starts going sometime, because the filter at night is not as effective as it is during the day to keep the chatter down. So I use GABA or theanine, which works on a certain receptor in the brain during the night when I wake up. You can't take anything at 9:30 at night and expect it naturally to last through the night. And if you have trouble waking up, but you can go to sleep, I always put 2 pills of theanine or GABA next to my bed with a cup of water, and it really helps calm the brain back down. And what I want is calmness. We don't want things that put us into an amnesia state, because there's side effects to all of that. So, again, and I know that suntheanine has, even studies on students who needed to be calmer but yet focused. And it doesn't make you sleepy. It makes you calm and focused. So they actually improve their test scores on a pretty reliable basis just by the use of suntheanine. And again, I have to sometimes take a little more. I have to sometimes take an extra pill. If it says 1, I might need to do 2 to truly get my personal effects from that. I want to say real quickly, again, if people have listened to me, they know that I want to meet people where they are, and not everyone's ready to change to a keto diet. And again, I really think we should teach our body to be flexible by teaching it to burn fat for fuel. The way to do that, a keto diet, first 2 weeks or even a few more weeks can be challenging, but we're trying to help people to fine-tune that challenge by the right advice. I will say that the 50% of the real screw-ups with keto challenges begin in the breakfast. So if people listen to me, they know that I have this combination of 3 different products that I really put together, and I advise people to be on these. And one of them, it does include some MCT oil in one, but that's where you really start making it successful, because if you start your day wrong, I don't care what you do the rest of the day, you're toast. You can't fix it. Yes. If you start it perfect, you actually have maybe some room to make some mistake. But again, we're going back to, okay, we're all, embracing the keto diet. We're eating 50 carbs or less. We're teaching the body to burn fat for fuel. And so we've kind of dealt with some of the brain fog and lack of thinking with the suntheanine. We've dealt with the herbal bitters for the digestive tract, and also berberine will help the keto diet actually work even better because it's helping the insulin receptor sites. So I know that one of my coworkers, Adam, and myself, we recommend salt, not just plain old junky salt, but a full spectrum of mineralized salt that helps people to do much better sometimes on keto, because it seems to be depleted based on how the keto diet works. Tell me about that, Carrie.
Yeah, I think that, that is something. Salt is great as far as getting all of those minerals and microminerals and electrolytes back in our body. And I do kind of cringe when I see online where it just says, like lick a handful, or, like a handful of salt or something. I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope people aren't just doing Morton salt. And that's not the point. The point is to get, those true rich, like sea salt minerals in you. But you can do other things than just salt. I think that magnesium is absolutely super critical in this case as well. Well, let's go back and talk about, like, why is there an electrolyte imbalance, though? I think we should start with that and then come back to magnesium. And it's because, the first kind of transition, you should be drinking tons of water no matter what in your life, but people do see, more of a thirst. They're also going to see more urine excretion at the beginning of the ketogenic diet. And all of these sorts of things can actually throw off your electrolyte balance really, really rapidly. And so part of our part of that feeling tired, part of the brain fog, part of everything that we experience, if you have any sort of muscle issues at all. I think a lot of the side effects of keto that people find negative actually are due to a lack of these different types of electrolytes in our body. And it's a really easy fix, actually. Something like magnesium. I think most people are unaware that, we get a good amount of magnesium from our diets, but the food that these magnesium rich foods in our diet tend to be the ones that are high in carbs. So all of a sudden you cut out these carb heavy foods and you're missing magnesium. So, and it's hard. It's not easy to get magnesium on the ketogenic diet. I think about the beloved avocado, right? One of those things that everybody thinks about for keto. Well, an 8 ounces of avocado, and that's a lot of avocado, only contains 11% of our recommended daily value of magnesium. So supplementing with magnesium is, I think, it's an absolute necessary for me with the ketogenic diet.
That's a great point, Carrie. I had not realized the connection between magnesium levels are found higher in higher carb foods. So that makes total sense. And I did a podcast on the Holistic Navigator that talks about the miracle of magnesium. It actually is involved in probably more processes, 300 plus, than
300 plus.
Yeah, any other nutrient that we probably know about. So you know what? If 300 things on your automobile started not functioning optimally, you would know it very quickly. Well, why is it we don't seem to pick up on that with our body? One is it happens slowly, but we can address many of that with magnesium. And I do sometimes recommend a whole type of salt like Celtic or something. I don't want to get a salt taste in my taste buds, so I actually use salt capsules when I feel the need for that from a Himalayan. I don't use the junky ones, of course. And the Holistic Navigator is sponsored by nutritionw.com, and their online store carries all of the products, natural factors, the salt, everything we speak about. Now, one thing, Carrie, and again, I go back to my Ed's breakfast drink is what's listed on the website. But I've experimented more than anyone I know about putting combinations together. And the three things that I rely on for my breakfast 6 days a week is my keto protein, a certain fiber. But the third one, which has to be in here, is a greens product. And I honestly only recommend two different manufacturers, one of which is Natural Factors is the one I use at least half the time. Because I've seen how it's produced, I've seen how it was grown, I've seen everything about it, have total confidence in the integrity of this product. But I can tell you, and sometimes you think, why would a greens make a difference? It's day and night difference from multiple reasons. So maybe tell our listeners, why would they really need to have this greens in a product?
Well, I think the first thing is for people who are assuming that the ketogenic diet is just bacon and eggs, and that's a very wrong assumption, right? It's really what it is it's should be a plate of lovely non-starchy vegetables with a little bit of protein and a lot of fat, right? Good, healthy fats. So, but if you are that person where you're like, hey, it's a lot easier for me to eat this way, then I think adding greens into your diet you're going to get fiber in there. You're going to get a lot of micro minerals, micronutrients. So we're just looking at it from a nutrient perspective, then some of those things that might be missing in the ketogenic diet because we've cut out different food sources. But, for me, I love the protein and greens from Natural Factors, our fermented protein and greens, because it has plant protein in there. And I think that's another thing that can happen with the ketogenic diet is too much protein, too much maybe excessive amounts of protein that's causing inflammation when we're actually trying to prevent inflammation. So substituting something with a healthy aspect, like looking at a protein source that comes from plants is a really wonderful thing. And actually, this is interesting. I didn't know if you knew this, Ed, but you can actually absorb up to 40% more protein when it's fermented.
Really?
So yeah, when you ferment your plant proteins, you're actually removing more of those excess carbohydrates and you're concentrating down the amino acids, which makes them more available for digestion. So that's great, right? And so that's where I'm like, I suggest fermented protein for athletes, anybody, elderly people with digestive concerns, children where you're worried about growth percentiles, anybody who's really needing to get a good, rich protein source in their body, fermented plant protein, you're going to absorb it. Your body's going to utilize it appropriately. And you're not going to see the negative aspects of, too much of those omega-6s and some of those pro-inflammatory things that we can see in excess protein consumption.
That's a great point. And fermentation changes the game on so many foods that are grown on this earth because it quadruples or even more so some of the absorptions, as you say, and the nutrient level. And history is replete with so much about people who fermented foods who seem to be a healthier lot of people. And it certainly is growing in popularity at this point because of the sauerkrauts and all the fermentations that go on with podcasting and all the talk. And I can't say I'm a huge fan of things like kimchi. I really don't like that. My daughter could eat jars of it, but I guess that's something you do have to acquire a taste for. I do believe that the greens also are vital because of the fact that we need more alkalinity in our diet. And
Absolutely.
I don't care what protein you get, it's probably going to end up being acidic in the end result, or at least leaning that way. So I want to balance that with the alkalinity that comes from the greens. And, greens, I've spoken of this many times, it's not about the vitamin and minerals in greens. It's about what's called phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are a whole host of tens of thousands of molecules that plants use to be healthy themselves. Well, they use them to protect from ozone and disease and pests and heal themselves. Well, if we take in the phytochemicals correctly, we can inherit some of this magical blood chemistry of a plant. And that's why, like last night, you talked about, the way to eat, or kind of, you don't want too much of this or too little of that. Well, last night I had a bison burger at a restaurant, and I had broccoli, and I had Brussels sprouts, and I had a side order of avocado, and my liquid was non-carb. And so there was my perfect meal. I had the cruciferous vegetables, lots of fiber in those, healthier fat with avocado, had my protein in the bison, and bison is much cleaner meat in most cases. So that's just an example of one of my meals of greens. I think the last one, unless you have any other ones, Carrie, is constipation. The kind, not really trying to maintain regularity, but we're talking, whoops, it's been 3 days now. What does a person do?
Yes. And I think that these are more, now we're getting into more of the long-term things, right? You can set yourself up for success with keto at the very beginning by helping your transition into that ketabolic state that we're looking for. But then there are things that you can just be doing continuously, like the greens with MCT oil in it, right? That sounds like the perfect thing for me to replace a meal in the day for somebody to do. But there are some of these long-term things that we need to be addressing, and certainly, digestive enzymes, like we were talking about bitters earlier. But I think fiber, the other day I was writing up some things on fiber, and I was like, man, I need to do an entire course on fun with fiber, because fiber is fun, but it is something that I think we completely forget about. It's not super sexy to talk about, right? It's not exciting, but it is so exciting when you actually dive into it. And when you look at these types of diets, any sort of low carb diet, any sort of, gluten, diet, free diet, any sort of paleo diet, we're removing fiber sources from our body so significantly that it jams things up. So adding in a source of fiber is so critical. Also, with that fiber source, there are certain fiber sources that help to slow down the rate of carbohydrate digestion. So I think about like doing your carb cycling. That's perfect. People could do carb cycling and add even more of these fiber supplementations in during their carb heavy days, it's going to slow down the digestion of the carbs so their body doesn't necessarily go into like, oh, what's happening right here? Another transitionary state. So I think that adding fiber is the key at the end of the day to making sure everything is flowing correctly.
Well, that's great information. And the other thing that I know that I failed to mention on the greens too, and of course we all know the massive significance of this, is greens and fiber is food for the microbiome, the good bacteria within our system.
Berberine as well.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Going back to berberine, magical berberine.
There's a threesome there, the greens and the berberine and the fiber. I will say that my number one most popular podcast, and I think this will be about 96 that I've done at this point, is on constipation. And I go through a big step-by-step of this is, at first you do this if you're really constipated, which is fiber-based. Then you do this. But if you get in an urgent situation, urgent means super urgent means, I guess, go to your doctor. But, just a critical like, it's been 4 days now instead of every day. I don't recommend Senna except as a last resort. I do lean stronger to Triphala and Cascara Sagrada if those work appropriately, but everybody's different. So, you got to kind of experiment. But to learn more about constipation, please go back to my Holistic Navigator podcast on constipation. I have so much good information on there from me watching people for 40 years deal with this issue. Luckily, that's one I haven't. Well, Carrie, you've been so informative. We talked about berberine, suntheanine, the fermented greens, the magic of magnesium and how vital it is, introducing fiber and keeping it going every single day in the diet. I mean, it's all good common sense for everybody, but you really have to do this on a keto in order to achieve your results. And again, I don't want people to think, well, you sound like it's all side effect based. No, it's not, because the miracle of keto I believe will make you live more quality years. And if it doesn't make you live more quality, you're going to live quality, if not even more. And it's going to reduce inflammation. It's going to give you the ability to burn body fat like you were when you were younger. And, I will say that if you weren't burning body fat extremely well at 20, I don't know if it's going to turn you into super person, but it will take you back to about where you were at 20. By no means bragging, very strict, almost too strict in my life. I'm now wearing size 30 pants, weighing 174. Same thing I did in high school. And I did not do this until I was about 59 years old. Actually, I'm 63 now. So even with all my healthy food supplements, training 5 days a week, never was I able to achieve what I have achieved by cycling in and out of keto diet. So I highly encourage people to experiment. I do use intermittent fasting somewhat, or not somewhat, at least 2 nights a week, and generally 5 if I can. So those are big pluses for me. So I think we've armed people with the ability now to not only do keto, but to do it successfully like you originally said, Carrie.
Yes. And it's a wonderful journey for people to have, and knowing that there are things out there like, I just want to remind people that keto isn't just in the grocery department. There are some really amazing things to help them have the most success that they can possibly have with this kind of, it's life-changing for a lot of people.
Yep. That's good words, life-changing. And, I'm going to say this real quick. I rarely watch TV. Actually, I didn't even get a TV until about 4 months ago, and for the past 6 years. And there's a show on there, and I've only watched 2 shows, and both are reality. It was called Alone. Alone was the name of it. And it was so cool. The one from Antarctica, they put these 10 people out in these separate locations, and they have to fend for themselves for food and everything. And they carry 70 pounds of cameras. It's the coolest show I've ever seen in my life. But what it taught me something about keto diet that was absolutely a billboard statement to me. Well, this one guy, he was an amazing hunter. He hunted with a recurve bow. He was there about 70 days. It was freezing cold. There was no vegetation to eat after the first frost came, and he shot a moose. Well, I figured this guy, he's got it. He's got all this meat and food, and nobody else has that much. He started wasting away because all he could get in his diet was protein. Moose, I was going to say meese. Moose do not have fat.
Very lean.
And
yes.
He was starting to suffer terribly. So he had to actually go out and find an animal that had fat in it, which was a trout. So he went and caught a huge trout. It was the game changer. All that protein was killing him. And he said that. He said, this protein's killing me, until he caught that maybe 5-pound trout, which we know has a lot of omega-3s in it. Completely game changer. Well, he was on not the kind of keto diet you and I would want to be on, but with the trout and the moose, he was kind of heading that way. Without the trout, he was dying. So just a great example of how we should know what we should be putting in this engine of ours. Well, Carrie, again, thank you so much for joining me on the Holistic Navigator. But I think, just like I said, number 3 times, and I know people are going to be find value in these tips, and hope to see you sometime soon if you ever come back this way to Tennessee.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody listening. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to be able to come and spend this time with you.
Well, same here, Carrie. We've gone around the block many times in our life, and I'm hoping that, I do know people appreciate us sharing our passion, our heart, and our experience as teachers. I mean, I really feel that my evolution is becoming more of an educator and a teacher than probably anything else. Well, everyone, take care of yourself. Know that fear is a toxin. Please try to not fall into the big wagon of fear. Using things like theanine. I mean, I use that when my mind starts in that crazy monkey mind where it's running on. So I'm just wanting to throw it out at this stage of life and history with all the kind of chaos going on. Know that healthy foods can't always counter the kind of toxic fear that sometimes we swim in. So take heed, take care of yourself, the loved ones and family, and join us next time for another very educational Holistic Navigator. Thank you.
The information on this podcast and the topics discussed have not been evaluated by the FDA or anyone of the medical profession, and is not aimed to replace any advice you may receive from your medical practitioner. The Holistic Navigator assumes no responsibility or liability whatsoever on behalf of any purchaser or listener of these materials. The Holistic Navigator is not a doctor, nor does he claim to be. Please consult your physician before beginning any health regimen.